Hello everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. We're going to do my end of June wrap up. So since my mid-month wrap up, I have been a reading machine, which is always great. I have loved my reading progress, and I don't force myself to read. I just happen to read a lot of books as I enjoy it. So it's not like a pressure thing. And I have happened to read, 16 more books since then. And I've read a total of 34 books in June, which is craziness. I don't know how that happened. I genuinely just read for the pleasure of reading. So yay, always fun. And I literally, like I said, I don't plan it. I don't pressure myself. I just pick up books for the sake of picking up books. Also, when I read a great book, I want to read another good book and just keep going. So let's talk about them in order, as that's just literally the easiest way for me to go through them. So the first book that I finished after my mid-month wrap-up was Fairest. This is by Gail, Carson, Levine. This is also a Snow White retelling, and this is a sequel in a way. Maybe you'd call it a companion novel to Ella Enchanted, and I really enjoyed reading this. I buddy read this with Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures. I will link her down below in the description box. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. Now, when I was reading this is technically a reread for me, but I didn't remember much, if anything, when I picked this one up. I knew this was retelling because that's what she always writes. However, I basically knew nothing. And then as I was reading it, I was like, these are coming back to me a little. I'm kind of picking up memories. However, it was really, really great. I was very surprised by some things. Now, I loved how we had kind of a backstory essence. This was mostly backstory to Snow White. And I loved how Snow White was different, how this world was all about beauty, how it was all about music, and how Snow White kind of fit the music element, but not the beauty element, and how she was still beautiful, but not in the classical sense. So I thought that was really great, and how she had to learn to accept herself for that element. I also really enjoyed how it kind of spun things on its head. I did kind of catch the bad guy in this book, and I enjoyed how the dwarves weren't dwarves, and how it kind of just took different aspects of this and turned them around. I love how Gail Carson Levine does that to fairy tales. You're basically reading it and being like, what story am I reading? I know it's a fairy tale, but I can't figure out which one until you start to recognize elements, but not the main storyline, because she does rework it very well. So I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. It was a bit of a slow start though. I think it is worth it. However, I will say this, I picked up on audio thinking, oh, it's a song book, so we sung a bit more, and it wasn't. So the audiobook doesn't add anything in terms of music. However, it was a good audiobook nonetheless. Another book that I read, and I will talk about it briefly because I did make a dedicated video about these books. I read a lot of last title books because of my video series that I'm doing for the Buzzwordathon, and I had not read many last title books. So I have 5 of them to talk about in this video, and I will direct you to that video if you would like to have more in-depth synopsis on those books. So we're going to go over them quickly now, and I'll direct you to that video if you would like more in detail discussion. So one of those books was a poetry collection by Bilston, and this one is called You Took the Last Bus Home, and it is a really great poetry collection. I gave it 4.5, but I would round it up to 5 stars. It is basically just British humor, which I get because I watch a lot of British game shows and a lot of British TV shows. So I totally got it. And it was really great and really intentional modern poetry, which I really enjoyed. And I think it's a really great poetry collection to check out. So head over to that video if you want to hear more about that poetry collection. Another one was a romance novel called The Last Carolina Sister. This is by Michelle Major, and this one is about an animal rescuer who owns a big farm, and she meets up with this ER doctor who is on, he's on respite because he's been injured and he needs to heal, and it's a romance, and it was great. Really enjoyed that one, gave it 4 stars. Last Will and Testament by Molly MacRae was a paranormal cozy mystery, which I really enjoyed. This is the first in a cozy mystery series, and it follows a woman who recently inherits her grandmother's wool shop, and she has to go and take care of her grandmother's estate, and she discovers some paranormal going on. It was great. 4 stars. The Last Rabbit by Shelley Moore Thomas is about a girl who used to be a girl and is now a rabbit, and she has to decide whether to leave this magical island. It is an Irish myth or fairy tale that has been retold, and it is about her and her destiny and turning back into a girl potentially. It is very good. Gave it 4 stars. The Last Black Unicorn is by Tiffany Haddish, and this one is a memoir by Tiffany Haddish, just about her growing up and trying to get into the comedy scene. And it was really interesting, really powerful. It was not for the faint of heart with her life story, but I did give it 4 stars, and I would read another book by her. The last one for that video was Rebel Women of the West Coast, Their Triumphs, Tragedies, and Lasting Legacies. This one I gave 3 stars to, just for the length. It was very short. However, I did enjoy learning about women who kind of broke the mold on the West Coast and refused to stay inside their neat little boxes of what was expected of them. So I recommend checking out that video if you want to find out more about any of those books. And then I will get into the other however many books I have left to talk about. Next, I have the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Now, this one was from Ancientsathon, and I read this one as my next Timeless Tomes, which will be coming up in this month, so you will be seeing that one shortly. It is over 500 pages, and it was quite a beast to take on. I will talk about it in a full video, like I said, in this month, so you'll be able to watch for that. I listened to it on audio, which I did basically a spoiler-free review. It is a short story collection, essentially, as it follows multiple people on this journey just telling stories. And it was difficult to get into at times. I definitely read summaries, trying to figure out what each story was about. And I did enjoy some stories, but I'm not a short story lover by nature, so it was a little difficult for me in that regard. However, I did enjoy learning about life back then in the 1300s, and I did enjoy, you know, reading about an ancient time or medieval time. So in some regards it was good, in some regards it was not so good. I did give it 3 stars, and you can check out my full review, which will come out in a couple weeks, according to my schedule. But like I said, it's basically a short story collection, and I think it's great. For Kindle Vet on my TBR Clue game, I was struggling to find one, so I finally found 100 Quotes to Make You Think by Wolfgang Riebe, and I didn't really like this one. It was 2 stars from me, and it was because it was just really boring. I know it's quotes, but it was like you could have come up with more fun quotes. And then some of the quotes were really were insensitive, and it was just like, I don't even know. It was just really inappropriate at times, and like some of the quotes were just like I said, insensitive and very rude. And it was like, oh, this is funny, ha ha ha. And it's like, for some people, that's really not funny, especially the ones in regards to life or death and pain and, you know, oh, nothing's really that awful. And it's like, no, just no. It was just, yeah. I've read better quote books, and this was just really lackluster. It was only 22 pages, so it was very quick and easy to read, but it was just, I'm glad I have it off my not my Kindle, but my iBooks like thing, like to be read or whatever. But yeah, not worth reading in my opinion. Next, I read Lions at Lunchtime and Polar Bears Before Bedtime, or At Bedtime, by Mary Pope Osborne, the next 2 in the Magic Treehouse series. So these were really interesting in regards to learning about nature in these 2 locations, obviously Africa and the North Pole area. But I found it even more interesting in regards to the like safari aspect of Lions at Lunchtime with the different animals and the different informational facts that I got out of it. It was very interesting in that regard. And I think that's what I get out of these books, is the informational aspect and how it would apply to a child. That's kind of where I look at it. And as I work with kids, it's very easy for me to kind of put myself in that position of, would I actually be able to take this to a child and read it to them and like, you know, have that be informational and be, you know, good discussion and a good story. And then for Polar Bears at Bedtime, or Past Bedtime, whatever that title is, I found that to be really interesting in regards to the Indigenous people and how they pass on information and how they respect the animals around them. I found it to be very interesting and very informative, and I really enjoyed that aspect. Also the polar bears, and just, it was very good. So I gave them both 4 stars, and I enjoyed the next 2 installments of that series. Next, I basically listened to this the whole month, but this was Great Mythologies of the World. This is a great courses thing from Audible, and it was like 30 hours long. And I feel like it was good in some regards. In some continents, I really enjoyed it. However, other continents felt very disjointed, and I felt like I didn't really learn a whole lot. I walked away feeling like I learned some things, and yet I felt like it was lacking in others. And yes, I know 30 hours is not enough to learn about mythology of the whole world. However, I feel like it could have been more cohesive and not as scattered. And I have another big bone to pick, okay? And this is like my biggest bone to pick, because the first lecturer, I can't remember her name, but she did the first 2 continents. So she did Europe, and she did the Mediterranean and like Middle East area. And I was really unimpressed, at least when she did Europe, because what she said at the very beginning was, this is what a myth is, and this is what a myth is not. And she very clearly stated at the beginning of it that the Bible is not a myth, because people consider it to be fact. It is not considered to be fiction. And I was like, thank you for setting this precedent. If you set the precedent that we are going to look at the Bible as myth, that's the precedent. I'm fine with that. I personally don't agree, but that's fine. You know, if that's your precedent for setting this lecture, I'm fine with that. However, she went on to go through the entire Europe, which is 12 lectures. So 12 half-hour lectures, 6 hours of quoting or talking about the Bible in every single lecture in regards to each myth. In every single lecture, she talked about the Bible. And I am just so annoyed with this woman, because I was just like, you set the precedent that the Bible is not a myth. And yet every time it was like, twins are very common in myths, just like Jacob and Esau. No, you said that the twins in the Bible are not myths. Or just like in the Noah's Ark in the Bible. No, you said that's not a myth. And it's like, if you had set that precedent at the beginning, then that's fine. Like I said, I would have been fine if she had said, we're going to treat the Bible like a myth. I would have been absolutely fine, because that's the precedent set. But she set the opposite precedent, and I am super upset. So, yeah. I spent the entirety of the first, however long, the first 2 lectures, the first 12 hours, because it's 6 hours for each continent, and she did the first 2 continents. Basically upset. She did do a really good one on the book of Job, and she said, I know this is a Bible story, so it's not technically a myth, which I was impressed with, but I did like that one, but I was unimpressed with her for the most part. So overall, the series gets a 3-star from me. It was just really scattered in a lot of ways, and then I was really unimpressed with the first, a third of it, so it kind of tempered my personal opinion of it all. So that's the way it goes. So my next book is Elizabeth by J. Randy Taraborrelli. Now I do have a review of this one up individually, as this was our Fierce Women's Book Club book, and I did enjoy learning about Elizabeth Taylor. However, I have some issues with the audiobook versus the physical books. I talk about that in my individual review, and that review came out yesterday if you're watching this when it came out. So this is on my channel, the review. I will link it, and you can check out my full thoughts on Elizabeth Taylor's book, or the book about Elizabeth Taylor. So basically this book chronicles her entire life up until the point when the book was published, because she did die after the book was published. And I think it was a really interesting story, and looking at how she was raised and how she grew up in the movie theater industry and movie making industry, and how she got married all the times and how she really had to remake herself at a certain point. I also want to say here, in case you don't go watch that video, if you do listen to the audiobook, it is abridged and it is not the same as the physical book. So there are many details, English, that are cut out of the physical book. So if you're wanting a full comprehensive look at her life, the physical book is the way to go. The audiobook was good, but it did cut out much of her life. So, I mean, for example, the audiobook is 6 hours long and the physical book is over 500 pages long with all the footnotes. And that's just an example of how different they are in length. So I think it's just something of note. If you are wanting to have a fuller, more comprehensive look at Elizabeth Taylor, check out the physical book or the ebook over, the audiobook. My next one was another Agatha Christie for the month. I have read 2 so far this month, which I actually managed to read 5 Little Pigs. This one I did enjoy. It took me a while to get into, as like I mentioned in my TBR, the name Carla is triggering for me, and I don't know why it's still so triggering. Anyways, this one, it was good. I gave it 4 stars. This one follows Hercule Poirot as he is trying to basically solve this murder that happened 20 years in the past, or no, 15 years in the past. He has been commissioned essentially by this girl who is just become of age, and she wants to solve the mystery of her father's death. She does not believe her mother committed this murder, and so she wants to find out who of the other 5 guests could have done it and who did it. And so Hercule Poirot is on the case, essentially, is the plot. This book is basically composed of Hercule Poirot visiting those 5 other people present and getting them to write him the accounts of what happened at that day, and him compiling those accounts and figuring out what actually happened. It's all done without him being present at the crime scene. And then it's just a very interesting idea of him being not actually there when the murder happened, but he is able to solve it all through their own accounts. And it is beautifully told, and I think it is a really good story. I gave it 4 stars, and I do recommend it as a really great Agatha Christie mystery. So the last 2 books that I read were from the Bible, and they were Nahum and Zephaniah. So Nahum comes before Habakkuk, which I read last time, and I just felt like I was introduced to a verse to that one and I wanted to read it, but then I read Nahum for the first time in a long time, and that one is about the city of Nineveh. If you know the story of Jonah, that's the one that he was sent to, and it's about God calling them to repent and to justice, and he's warning them. And I feel like God gives people so many second chances. So that was great to read. And then also I read Zephaniah, and that one is where God is warning everyone else, Judah and the Philistines. And he is also speaking about a New Jerusalem, which was great to read as well. So redemption. So those were my 2 books for Ancientsathon. So 2 more ancient literature books. And now we're going to talk about how I did for all the readathons and everything. I'm just going to talk in more detail, as this video isn't actually as long as I thought it would be, considering I read so many books. So with all the readathons, I will link down below in the description all of the hosts, just so everyone is linked and you can find their channels. So for Ancientsathon, there was Jennifer Brooks and Hufflepuff Discovery, Tori over there, and I will link both of them like I said. So for a play, I read Romeo and Juliet, and then for a female author, I read The Lays of Marie de France. For nonfiction, I did not end up reading anything, unfortunately. It was just, I couldn't get to the 12 Shades Caesars, but such is life. Then for myths, I read the Great Courses one, which was the mythology of the world. For the group book, I did read Pilgrim's Progress. And then for a book that was referenced in other things, which is the Odyssey. For extras, I did read the Canterbury Tales. These are books that I intended on reading extras wise. And I also read Christina's Journey, which is the sequel to Pilgrim's Progress. So 2 more books that wise. For Pastoral June, I read 3 books in total for this, which was actually really good. Actually 4, so not bad either. So for a cover that had a pastoral look, I read The Last Carolina Sister. And then for a setting, I read The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. I think this totally works as they are traveling and talking about their stories, or they're definitely sitting outside and talking about their stories. For middle grade, I read The Ghost Town at Sundown by Mary Pope Osborne. And then I also read Burial Rites, which is definitely outdoors. It takes place a lot outside. It's very pastoral theme. So Pastoral June, I read 4 books for that. And that's posted by Literary Labors, Angie over there, and I will link her down below. In regards to goals, I did read 2 or 1.5 of my pre-2018 TBR jar books. And so I unhauled a bunch as well, just to get rid of the ones I'm not going to be prioritizing. So I consider that a win. I did read 2 Agatha Christie's, so that's great. I think my goal is now just 2 Christie's a month because I end up doing that, but I'm saying 1 for sure. I did read 1 Shakespeare play, which was Romeo and Juliet, and my timeless tome was Canterbury Tales, which I did read. So my goals were completed and my buddy reads were completed. I did my things, which is good. So I do have these stats up here, which I don't know why they look so wonky, but they do. They say 35 books. I don't know where that extra book is coming from, but honestly, at least on Storygraph, which I do have my Storygraph linked in my description as well if anyone wants to check me out there or join Storygraph. I think it's a great program, and in addition to Goodreads, because I haven't lost my Goodreads either. I like both. Anyways, side note with that. That was a side note. I don't know where, like, they lost one of my books that I've already read this year, so I was like, well, I'll just keep the other books because I have read an extra book. So I am at whatever, I'll find it soon, but I am at 35 books on this for the month, but technically 34. And this stat says 7,676 pages for the month. So I'm very happy with that. And you can see the pie, which is like all over the place, but I read a lot of informative books. I think it's because I read a lot of classics, to be honest. And this is really interesting. So I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of fantasy this month. So a lot of fantasy, a lot of children's books, a lot of classics, and a lot of mysteries, which is super interesting. Yeah, this is crazy. And then I read 4 religion books, which doesn't surprise me, being Pilgrim's Progress and a couple other ones. Poetry, which classics, crime books, history, and then a lot of other things. Like I read all over the place in June, all over the place, which is great. So those are my stats for the month. And then we'll go into the stats for the whole year, since why not? And it's a 6-month point, so let's see where we're at. For my 2021 goals, I said I wanted to have read 50,000 pages by the end of 2021. And I wanted to have read 150 books. Now I'm going to smash that goal out of the park, at least with the books and the page numbers, because I have read a total of 34,161 pages. I can't believe it. I think I just had a really, I've got a good streak. I don't know what else to attribute it to. I've had a great streak. Also, I've read 142 books so far this year. I'm 8 books away from my total goal, but this is also including my 3 books that I've already read in July. So take those books off. It was 139 books, and take off that number. So it's probably more like 33,000 pages that I've read in at the halfway mark. So really good. No, I'm doing really well. I pat myself on the back. But no, it's really great. And then just a quick overview, my shortest book was a Bible book, being Habakkuk, and 3 pages. And then my longest book is Wives and Daughters at 9,000. 9,903 pages. The average book length is 240 pages, so this will be including my most recent 3 books. I'm sorry, I'm not taking them off for this. My most popular was Harry Potter because I read that this year, and my least popular was Journey to the Center of the Earth graphic novel. My average rating so far is a 3.8, and my highest rated was Sully, which was beautiful children's book. My first review, and then all the books I've read. I will link this down below in my description as well if you want to check it out. So anyways, that is my crazy reading so far. In this year, I'm going to smash those goals out of the park, which I can't believe it. I think May really kicked me off on a good start, and I haven't wanted to put down reading yet, so I'm excited. And I have a lot of big reading plans for July, especially with Lemez, so there we go. Anyways, I am hoping to keep the streak going, and I hope that you are doing well. Please let me know down in the comments what was your favorite book in June. Did you do Ancientsathon or Pastoral June? Did you do anything else that you were reading for? I hope to hear from you in the comments. Also, you can like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you are new here, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.